Hey, hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady. And in this video, I'm reviewing a Porsche 911 Carrera Cabriolet. So listen up, the Porsche 911 has been around for almost 6 decades and it's now in its 8th generation. This one is called the 992 and it's the most advanced Carrera Porsche has ever made. I'm talking lightweight aluminum all over this body, twin turbo engine, a sophisticated interior, and the latest technology. Now, even though Porsche says this thing is all new, what that really means is that this is an evolution of the original Porsche 911 from 1963. Porsche's got this uncanny and infamous ability to continuously refine the 911, and every time a new one comes out, they manage to make it better. So the last 911 I drove was a 991.1 GT3 RS, and that car was unbelievable. Now, I know it's not a fair comparison to look at a Porsche GT car and a base 911 Carrera, but I'm still excited to see what Porsche has done with this 992 generation. Is it going to deliver that 911 experience like the ones before it? I'm really anxious to find out in this review of the 992 Porsche 911 Carrera. Foot on the floor, launch control. Let's go. There we go. All right, so let's start off the review by talking about the exterior design of this 911. And one thing remains true. It still looks like a 911, which is an amazing accomplishment from Porsche to be able to make something that's 6 decades old or almost 6 decades old still be popular and desirable. But one thing that has changed is that all 992s now come with a wide body both in the front and in the rear. If you remember, prior to this generation, that was only reserved for 4-wheel drive cars and of course the GTS and above. One word I like to use when I describe exterior design is presence. Now, the 911 always had presence, but this wide body makes it look so much more menacing and have that enhanced presence that I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm raving about the design already, so let's get into some of the details about this 911. So the trunk, or the frunk, because it's in the front and the engine is in the back, this reminds me a lot of what 70s and 80s Porsche's hoods or frunks look like. It's so classic. There's 2 cuts that cut into the middle of the hood, and it looks so elegant. Now, how does this hood work? There's a button on the interior, there's a button on the key, but one thing that it's missing is some type of remote or keyless access entry like the Corvette had, the new C8 Corvette. It's got like this little hidden compartment here, but I couldn't find anything for the Porsche. I'm nitpicking about that, but anyway, I figured I would point that out. Maybe that's an improvement for the 992.2 generation. Okay, so you push the button on the key and there's a little latch here. You pull on that and you're greeted with 4.6 cubic inches of space. This is not the largest space. It is also not the smallest space. I think you can probably fit a medium-sized luggage suitcase in here. Probably not one of those extraordinarily large ones, but a medium size fits fine in here. You can see I've got some camera equipment in here, and I've got maybe another probably two duffel bags of space in addition to what I've got in here now. Now, as far as closing the trunk, there is no grab handle, but there is this latch here that you can pull on and softly close it and push on your Porsche crest to shut it closed. And that's basically the functionality of the trunk. All right, so now let's move on to the rest of the exterior, and of course, one of the most infamous designs of the 911 are its headlights. And these are, of course, in the circular, or now they're more oval design. And Porsche says that they're mounted a little bit more upright, and I personally can't tell the difference, but I will take Porsche's word for it. The headlight itself is called the LED Matrix, and it's an all LED design. There are these 4 dots around the actual headlight beam, which gives it a really cool look at night and even during the day. And then you've got these running lamps that are right underneath it along the bumper. And talking about the bumper, this is one thing I'm mixed about the 992. For some reason, I'm going back and forth between the Aero kit and just the regular look. I do like the regular look, but I feel like it's missing something, and maybe that'll be fixed with the GT3 version of the 992. But I'm glad to say that these are real vents, being that the 911 is a sports car. It's allowing air through 3 different sections of the front bumper. And the overall opinion of mine for the front end design is it still looks like a classic 911, and that's an amazing thing. All right, so now you're looking at the side profile of the 992 911, and one opinion of mine about the convertible versions of the 911 is that Porsche makes them look amazing. They look good with the top closed and shine even better and look even better with the top down. But before giving you details about how the convertible works, one important change here from the side profile are the door handles. Porsche has made them flush with the body, and they're electronically operated. You put your hand underneath them, they lift up, you lift or you pull on the door handle, door opens. When you want to exit, you close the door, but you'll notice that the door handle remains in the upright position. So what you do is you touch this little keypad, touchpad area, and the doors will lock and they will retract back to their flush state with the body. I think it looks really nice. Now, moving to the convertible top. It has 400 individual parts, if you can believe that. There is an integrated glass that allows you to see out of the back when you're from the inside. And the operation. There is a button on the interior. You push that. The opening and closing mechanism takes about 12 seconds. But the remarkable feat about it is at what speed you can open and close the top. 31 miles per hour, or up to 31 miles per hour. This is significant because remember the Mazda Miata RF that I drove a couple weeks ago, the Targa top on that took about 15 to 17 seconds, and you could only do it when you're going less than 10 miles an hour. Now, this one, you don't have to pull over or be going at a snail's pace in order to close the top. So that's really, really good. One thing I'm going to ding Porsche for is there is no way to open and close the convertible top from the outside. You have to be in the car. I saw this in the BMW Z4 M40i. That's a really convenient feature. However, there is something in the aftermarket that I researched. It's called Smart Roof or Smart Mod, and it allows you to control your 992 generation 911's convertible top using your key fob. You just hold it down and it closes it, but again, that's aftermarket. I wish Porsche would just have put it in stock. All right, so now let's talk about the wheels, tires, and brakes on the 992. But before getting into a lot more detail, remember when you used to get 18-inch wheels on an 911? Those days are long gone. The standard trim now, you get 19 inches in the front and 20 inches in the rear. This is one difference between the Carrera and the Carrera S. In the Carrera S, you get 20 inches up front and 21 inches in the rear. But this one that I'm driving is optioned with the Carrera Classic wheels, and they look absolutely stunning on this silver paint. They are 20 inches up front by 8.5, 21 by 11 in the rear. So they look really, really good. They're wrapped with a 245 section tire up front and a 305 section tire in the rear. Moving inside the wheelbarrow, another difference between the Carrera and the Carrera S, you get smaller brakes in the Carrera. 12.9 inches up front, 12.9 inches in the rear. 6 piston calipers front and rear. They're painted in black for this example, but in the Carrera S, you get bigger brakes by almost a full inch on the front and in the rear, and 6-piston brakes. So just remember that. Not that there's anything wrong with these Carrera brakes. They're very good, as I will detail in the driving portion of the review, but the differences between the Carrera and the Carrera S I'm pointing out so you've got the information. Otherwise, this is a really clean looking wheel and tire package. All right, so now we made it to the rear of the 911, and I love the way this thing looks from back here. It just looks so good with the wide body, and the way I can describe it is it just looks right. That's all I can say. So since we're back here and the engine for the 911 is in the back, let's talk about the engine. But before talking about the engine, of course, let's talk about the trunk or the hood or whatever you want to call it, because it's back here. It's interesting because the way it operates, because this is a convertible, you have to go inside the door. There's a latch, you have to hold it down, and there's an electronic mechanism that lifts this part of the convertible top, and you get the exposed area of the engine compartment, if you want to call it that. And the reason why I say that is because all you see are 2 fans, and you have the ability to fill in some engine oil, and you have a little Mobile One sticker that looks really cool and somewhat makes you feel like you're looking at an engine compartment, but otherwise you're not really seeing anything regarding your engine. Anyway, then to close the engine cover or the hood, you have to go back inside, hold that lever down again, and then it will electronically close. I found this really head scratching, but it made sense to me because this is a convertible top, and they had to work with this rear end and the way the convertible top actually folds and retracts and stores itself. Okay, so now let's talk about the engine itself. It is a 3-liter twin turbocharged flat 6-cylinder engine, boxer 6 of course, 379 horsepower, 331 pounds-feet of torque, with a 7,500 RPM redline. Now the difference between this engine and the Carrera S, which makes a little bit more power, is that the turbos are a little modified and it's detuned. So it's practically the same displacement and the turbo count is the same. It's still twin turbo and it's a 3-liter engine. You just get less horsepower and a little bit of modification. Anyway, 0 to 60 time in this Cabriolet, 4.2 seconds. And if you get the Sport Chrono package like this car does, 4 seconds flat. Unfortunately, the only transmission option in the base level Carrera is a 8-speed PDK. Now I'm going to qualify that unfortunate statement because the PDK transmission is an unbelievable transmission. It's just so good, and I'll detail that during the driving portion of the review. But the manual transmission is just something different, and I wish Porsche had it in the base level, but they reserve it only for the Carrera S and above trim levels. Anyway, weight in the Cabriolet, 3,504 pounds, I believe to be exact, which is still light considering convertible cars nowadays are getting closer to 2 tons or 4,000 pounds. So that's actually a really remarkable achievement. Gas mileage, it's a 6-cylinder. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's actually decent for a sports car. 18 in the city, 24 on the highway for a combined average of 20. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more design back here, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. So the first thing I want to talk about is this engine cover. Now this engine cover has vertical slots here, and it's flanked by this brake light in the middle. The interesting thing here is if you wanted to differentiate between a rear-wheel drive car and an all-wheel drive car, you would just come back here and look at these slots. If they're painted in black, that means it's a rear-wheel drive car. If they've got silver or chrome finish, it's a all-wheel drive car. So that was pretty interesting and a cool tidbit. Next, we come down to the electronic spoiler. Or pseudo spoiler. This thing opens and closes automatically, and you also have the ability to do it manually. The manual option, you're in the car, there's a button in the infotainment screen, you hold that down and the spoiler opens up. Now the interesting thing about the spoiler is when it's open, it's blocking the third brake light. So it has an integrated brake light in the spoiler, as you can see, and then you hold down that same button and the thing comes down automatically. All right, so now let's move to my second favorite thing in the rear after the wide body are the tail lights and this light bar. I don't know what else to say about it other than it just looks absolutely fantastic and spot on. The taillights are LED, they're smoked, they look amazing at night and during the day. The light bar is just something most manufacturers are going to nowadays, but Porsche just executes it so nicely. Then you've got the floating Porsche lettering here. Underneath that, you have the blacked out Carrera 911. Now you have the option to remove this. You have the option for it to just say 911. So you've got options. And of course, that's not surprising. Carrera 911s or Porsches in general have long option lists. All right, so now let's close out the rear end discussion by talking about the diffuser and the exhaust choices. So with the diffuser, you have two cut openings on both sides. They're for heat extraction from the engine bay. And then you also have cutouts for this exhaust. Now, the difference between the Carrera and the Carrera S as far as the exhaust tip goes, the Carrera has two squarish or rectangular exhaust exits, while the Carrera S has four or quad exhaust tips. Now you're asking yourself, all right, Andy, then why does this base level have four exhaust tips? Well, the reason for that is because you can option these. These are the sport tailpipes, not to be confused with the sport exhaust, which are dual exit again and have oval tips. Those are completely different and they're more expensive. And the mufflers are actually modified. They sound different, while this one is just an exhaust tip to make your Carrera look like a Carrera S. But anyway, enough talking about the tips. Let's listen to what this thing sounds like. All right, so now the interior portion of the 911 review, and I gotta say that this is a very high quality, nicely sized, good place to be, I guess. That's the best way I can describe it. So let's jump into a little bit of more detail and I'll explain to you why. So starting off with these seats, these are the 14-way seats, and the interesting thing about them is that Porsche says that they've shaved about 5 millimeters or so of cushion out of the seats, and they say that supposedly it's more comfortable. I'm not sure how they're assessing that, since comfort is somewhat of a subjective thing. But anyway, I gotta say they are comfortable. They're a little bit on the hard side for me. They're not... I have sat in a more comfortable seat. Let me just put it to you that way. The surprising thing, the bolsters are fixed. They are not adjustable, but everything else is adjustable as you would expect. And then let's move to the steering wheel. So this steering wheel is oval. I'm surprised it's not flat bottom, because most sports cars are flat bottom steering wheels, but Porsche has obviously decided to go in a different direction. But anyway, no fault there. It's a small diameter. It's a nice size. It's not very thick. It's not thin. Me personally, I wish it was a little tiny bit thicker, but that's just a small nitpicking item. And then moving to the paddle shifters, the backs are plastic, which is really interesting, but the fronts are a metal material. I wonder why Porsche did that. It's obviously for looks, but for feel, you're kind of missing there. Sometimes when you touch it on a cold winter day and you get that cold fingertip feel, you're going to miss that. You're not going to get it here in a 911. Going back to the steering wheel, you have these multi-control buttons, and they're interesting because they kind of float. You can see your fingertips or your paddle shifters through them. And then finally, the drive mode selector, which is an option on the Carrera package. You get it as a part of the Sport Chrono. This allows you to toggle through your drive modes. You have normal, sport, sport plus, individual, which allows you to custom tailor certain things, and wet. It also has a button that gives you sport response for 20 seconds. Moving beyond the steering wheel, you have the keyless entry system or the keyless start system on the left. You're wondering why is it on the left? There's a lot of racing heritage behind here. It's because of Le Mans and being able to get a faster start. But I'm not going to go into too much technical details. Just know that it's on the left as opposed to the right, much like in every other car, and it's not push start. You actually have to do the left-right mechanism or movement in order to turn the car on and the car off. So there is this little traditional or nostalgic feel that you still get in a 911. And then let's move to the gauges. Now, the gauge cluster is the classic 5-pod Carrera 911 gauge cluster. So your main focus is in the middle, and your center gauge is the RPM, and it's an analog gauge, and it looks fantastic. The font is a classic Porsche font. It's a little modernized, but still looks like a Porsche. And then the needle, it's so elegantly designed. It's got a metal tip and it's got metal housing, and then there's a little light strip. So when you're driving at night, it just looks so cool, I guess, or mechanical, for the lack of a better term. And then inside there you have your electronic mile per hour readout, and then your readout for the mode you're in for the transmission, or what gear you're in. And then flanking the center RPM gauge are two 7-inch screens which are configurable. On the left you have the speed, and then furthest left you have a clock showing a clock and then the temperature outside. And then on the other side you have a highly customizable screen that allows you to toggle through your trip, your gas mileage, the mode you're in, navigation. So there's a lot of customization there. And then furthest right you have your temperature gauge and your gas gauge. Now the issue with this, and it's true what all the reviewers are saying, is your steering wheel impedes in the way of the outer two gauges on the left and the right. You kind of have to move your head a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right to be able to see those outer gauges. They're not a huge nuisance, but it's definitely noticeable when you're driving. All right, so now let's move to the rest of the interior, kind of moving away from the driver. We come down to the infotainment screen. Now this infotainment screen, not only is it crisp, not only is it the right size and positioned properly, it is one of the deepest, not complicated, but most, I guess there's a lot of customization in this infotainment system. The functions of the car are somewhat heavily centered in this infotainment screen. A lot of the functions and things you can do are in this screen. So let me explain. This car has heated and cooled seats. You have buttons to turn on your heated and cooled seats. But if you wanted to get a little bit more technical, you can go into the infotainment screen and specify where you want more heat or where you want more cold air to be blown on your backside. So you either have it blow cold air or generate heat on the seat rest or on the seat bottom. So that's one example of high customization available through the infotainment screen. Otherwise, it's easy to use. It's touchscreen. If you don't like using the touchscreen, there's a little controller here that allows you to operate the system without touching the screen. But the infotainment system in general is a great unit. There's a lot of information in there. The shortcuts that you have running along the left side of the screen are very helpful. They allow you to toggle through your navigation, through your audio, through your car settings, your climate control system. So it's easy to use. The shortcuts make it easy to use, even though it's a rather not complex, but I don't know, let's call it a heavy system, if that makes any sense. All right, so let's move away from the infotainment system and talk about the rest of this center section. So you've got a row of buttons here right underneath the infotainment system. Two of them are shortcut keys. You have the hazard key, traction control, and then you have the PASM button. So this is the PASM Sport button. This is independent of the drive modes. You have the ability to set this to sport. And then even further down here in the center section. So there's a lot of gloss black here. It's not the best thing, and I prefer if they give you an option for carbon fiber. Next, the climate control vents, the lighting, it looks really, really nice. It's very modern. It's simply laid out, and you have 3 toggle switches again to control the temperature, the fan speed, and the temperature for the passenger side. So this is a dual zone climate control system. And then finally, the PDK selector, which was very controversial when it came out, and I don't know if people have gotten used to it, but when I see it in person, It looks a little strange, but I understand why they did it, because there are definite benefits, at least in my eyes. Number one, it flows really nicely with the rest of the interior. Number two, it declutters this area here. Sometimes when you've got this big, humongous drive selector, I don't know, it kind of looks funny. And this is a very modern interior, so it suits the interior really nicely. So it's not as bad as people say. Next, let's talk about how you operate the PDK selector. So you put your foot on the brake, you pull it all the way down, that'll put you in drive. You tap it up once, that'll put you in neutral. You push it all the way up, it'll put you in reverse. The way you park is simple, it's a button. So you push that and puts you in park. Then there's another button underneath it for M, which will put you in manual or paddle shifting mode. Now coming down from there, you have the two buttons for the heated and cooled seats. And by the way, they're very effective, especially the cooled seats. When I've sat in cooled seats before, they're not like the greatest. They're just ventilated. And I don't know if these 911 seats are ventilated as well, but they definitely feel cool. Next, you have the convertible top operation buttons, and then you have another button to control the wind deflector. And then coming down from there, you've got a cup holder here in the center. So this cup holder, you have the ability to remove it like so, and you have a little storage area here. But now you're wondering, where is the other cup holder? The passenger has one as well. It's right here. You push on that, and then it comes out. It's not the typical Porsche design that you would see where it comes out and it's pointed towards the driver, but it'll work. And then you have the center storage compartment, which is not very deep, but it's of decent size. You can fit your sunglass case and your cell phone in there. There are two USB outlets, and there is a storage card or an SD card slot. All right, so now moving to the back seats. They are qualified as back seats, but you can't really fit anybody or a larger size adult back there. I tried sitting behind myself and I couldn't even get the backrest to get back into place. So that's basically the interior. Now let's move to the driving portion of the review. All right, so the driving portion of the review, and as always, showing off what the key looks like. There you go. See if it'll, oh, there we go, focused properly. You got the Porsche crest right up there, which makes it cool. It's still plastic, so it's somewhat underwhelming, but it does have a nice weight to it. And of course, it's got the Porsche 911 body. I don't know if it's, maybe when you look at it this way, you can see that it somewhat resembles that wide body of a 911, and Porsche's infamous for doing this. And if you don't like the plastic feel or the plastic key, you can have it body color match, and you can mess around with a lot of things. And that's the beauty of Porsche options. It allows you to individualize your car. Okay, so now visibility. So there's no issues with visibility at all. The Porsche 911 does feel like you're sitting in a fishbowl. You can see everything in your peripherals. The windows are of a good size. The hood overall drops when you're looking out in front of you. In addition to that, I've got a bunch of safety features. Now remember, the Porsche 911 gained a lot of weight, and it's because a lot of these safety features were blended in or made available. I have blind spot monitoring. I have like a camera in the front that detects collision warning and things like that. I have a 360-degree camera, which is of excellent resolution. It's probably the best 360 camera as far as resolution goes, and it's very clever because when I put it in reverse, there's a rear view camera that pops up. In addition to that, it shows me from a top down, and then when I put it in drive, at least for the initial drive off period, it will switch to a front camera, which is very helpful for pulling out of driveways and things like that. So it's a very clever and sophisticated camera system. Very good resolution. All right, so let's go ahead and foot on the brake. Of course, start stop is on the left hand side. Turn it to the right. It starts up with that Porsche growl. Sounds really good. So let's go ahead and put the seatbelt on. Let me move my microphone to the seatbelt so I'm not concerned about making a staticky noise. And of course, let's lower the convertible top because it's just more fun that way. There we go. If you guys want to count, I believe I said it was about 11 or 13 seconds. So there it goes. now it's closed and the windows are up. Everything's ready to go. So, it's my water bottle. Excuse me for that. Let me adjust my seat. And let's go for a drive. So, what can I say to at least start off with? The feel of the 911 is something that's very special and unique. It's the driving experience, which I'll get to here in a second, is something that you don't get in any other car. That engine noise behind you and the way the nose drops off and the size of the car is something that you're not going to get in any other experience. So now let's go ahead and pull out, and I'm going to turn around here because there's a straight stretch of road if I turn back and go back the other way. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's see. All right, all clear. And I think I'm going to give launch control a try too. Hopefully I don't screw it up. All right, here we go. It should be as simple as put it in Sport Plus. There's nobody behind me, nobody in front of me. Foot on the floor, launch control. Let's go. There we go. It's pretty good. The transmission shifts are just unreal. Let's go again. Wow, it's got that Porsche sound. It does have it. The exhaust it's a little underwhelming. I think the first thing you got to do, at least in this base version, without the sport mufflers, I don't know what the sport muffler sounds like, but I think it needs a little bit more exhaust. It sounds good, but it needs a little bit more, at least to my preference. But otherwise, in that launch control, I felt that there was a little bit of, it was missing something off the line. And I don't know if that's because of the turbo lag, but once it gets going, the throttle response is actually very, very good for a forced induction engine. So I just came to a stop. I want to do another pull here. The exhaust is sneaky raspy. I sense like there's a little bit of rasp there in that engine. I don't know if it's coming through in the video. Take a listen. Can you hear that? There's rasp in this exhaust, and I'm a big fan of rasp. I like it in my E46 M3, and it sounds pretty good here too. But I still do maintain the exhaust does need a little bit more oomph, I guess, for the lack of a better term. But anyway, as far as the speed goes in this car, this is a plenty fast enough car. And the rear wheel drive and the open top experience kind of gives it a faster than it is type of feel. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's a plenty fast enough car as a base car. And the transmission, oh my God, this PDK is just unreal. It's so smart. The PDK is so smart. Perfect upshifts, smooth downshifts, smooth upshifts. Even in automatic mode, when you're in Sport Plus, it will downshift for you and put you in the right gears. So it's such a smart, exquisite, snappy, crisp, all the wonderful things you can say about a transmission. This is it. Is it as engaging to drive as a manual? Never. That will not happen. But as far as a double clutch transmission that kind of knows what you're doing, if you're driving fast, it shifts more aggressively. It's spot on. It's really, really nice. And about the modes, when I'm in Sport Plus mode, I can definitely feel the difference as far as throttle response goes. It's definitely much, much sharper. And then when I drop it down to normal, let me turn from here. I'm stuck at a red light and I'm talking about throttle response. How's that gonna work? So in normal mode, there's something missing. It's a little slow. The way I can describe, it's probably turbo lag. When I press it, now it's going. So there's a little bit of a lag when you're in normal mode. When you're in Sport or Sport Plus, that goes away. So if you really want to get on it and you want to have that instant gratification of throttle response, you need to be in Sport Plus or Sport Plus mode. But normal is nice for day-to-day driving. So let's transition into that. Day-to-day driving. Here in Los Angeles, the Porsche 911 is pretty much as common as a Honda Civic in certain parts of the county. So, does that mean that the Porsche 911 is a good daily driver? Well, I can tell you after driving it around for a couple hours at this point that it is a good daily driver for a sports car. That's what I'm going to caveat it with. Is it a soft and supple ride? Absolutely not. It is not a comfortable pillow type of ride. You're not going to get that. Is it direct? Is it firm? Yes, absolutely it is. And of course it should be, because it's a sports car. And it does this. That's what you're really buying it for. And it has that good dual nature characteristic. So it's good as a daily driver, as long as you have your expectations checked and you're not expecting the 911 to be like some luxury, I don't know, 7 Series or 5 Series sedan type of ride. You're not going to get that. This is still definitely a sports car, and it feels like a sports car, and that's a good thing because that's what this is. So, as far as daily drivability goes, would I daily drive this? Yeah, because it's freaking cool and it's freaking fast, and it has a convertible top that I could enjoy. Maybe if I got off of work, I take the top down. It kind of takes the edge off of the day when you're able to sit in a car with the engine in the back and basically hammer it down a road and listen to the exhaust. Those are kind of my thoughts. If you have any questions that I did not answer, please feel free to put them in the comments below, and I will try and get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. I'm gonna keep driving now, so thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.